Oh, hello, everybody, my crime family. This is Once Upon a Crime Time with your host, Tommy Jew. I'm not live here. The chat's live. I am not. Been a little while since I did a video. Been doing a lot of lives lately. People need to learn how to let go of things in life and stop being a bully. Stop being bullies. We just went over this where a 17-year-old boy got his head kicked in by being a bully, by bullies. And then, I compared it to some of this community, and there's kind of like two major ones, and they just don't let go. And, the holidays are for fruitcake. But you got to stop eating the fruitcake. And there's something in it. There must be. One of my mods was attacked verbally, and then attacked on her phone. She doesn't know how these people got her phone number. Needs to stop, people. Needs to stop. I don't make money on this channel at all whatsoever. So I can see why other people are bothered if their stats go down, which I have no clue how that would happen. Maybe it's because people are seeing things. I am not a god. I don't want to be worshipped as a god because I come out with good content or something. You know what I'm saying? And I sure the hell ain't going to worship anybody like they want to be. I just don't get it, people. I don't, and then, calling people names, now I'm being called a criminal in a sneaky little snide way. Not a criminal. I sold weed back in the day, 20-some fucking years ago. But I never got caught, so I don't have a criminal fucking record. So I guess I'm self-confessed, because it was illegal back then to have weed. But guess what? It's legal nowadays in this state. I can go to a store and buy whatever the hell I want. So, yeah, whatever. But when people start, and I'm not saying him, but I have a beautiful crime family, and we always talk about love and loving each other. It's not the same over there. They're taught to worship the ground he walks on. Totally different. I wasted enough time on this shit. Get over it. I can't even believe that. I took that one video where I was screaming and hollering down. I did that as a gesture because I felt it was wrong of me to get that angry, which I was angry at that time. And I'm not going to let him control my emotions and get me angry anymore. But I wish He would tell his people to leave my mods the hell alone. And we are looking into things of how people are getting phone numbers. I am who I am. I put it out. You can see my face. I don't hide. And then I don't go on blogs to hide even more and to say bad things about people. And then there are people can say bad things in the blogs and they all feel good together. I'm not like that, man. I am who I am and I show who the hell I am. I'm not an invisible man eating fruitcake. Anyway, I got a pretty good show here, I think, today. There's some parallels to this. And I don't know if you've heard of Angie Dodge or not or whatever, but if you haven't, you're gonna learn a little bit about her and about that case. But there is some interesting similarities that I'm sure you will see. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. I'll bring this up. There. Another beautiful young girl here. And the untold story behind the 1996 Angie Dodge murder mystery. And this is kind of a disturbing one too. And you'll see why. All right. Jerry Bradley, the DNA guy, helped investigate solve crime using the MVAC wet vacuum forensic DNA collection system. Okay, so this guy helps people, helps, police departments, investigators, blah, blah, blah. Murder, rape, deception, investigation, coercion, unjust incarceration, exoneration, justice. Look at that, people. Look at the order. Murder, rape, deception, investigation, coercion, unjust incarceration, exoneration, and finally, justice. This may sound like the makings of a Hollywood suspense thriller, but it's actually the core of a real-life story. In May of 1996, Angie Dodge was a happy teenager who had just graduated high school in a relatively quiet, beautiful little city called Idaho Falls, Idaho. She was excited about moving into her own apartment and starting a new summer job, anxious to begin the next phase of her life. And I should have grabbed my glasses. Hold on a second. Okay, well, let me go grab them real quick. All right, so, yeah. Angie's mother, Carol Dodge, was hesitant to let her move out, but Angie was 18 and, like many teenagers, ready to cut the apron strings and start her new life as an adult. So around the third week in May, Angie moved into her apartment, which was on the second floor of a building in the central part of Idaho Falls. It was the worst decision either Angie or Carol could imagine. But how could they have possibly known a monster capable of raping and murdering an innocent young woman was lurking nearby? In 1996, Idaho Falls was a place where the citizens rarely worried about getting their car stereo stolen, let alone being raped and murdered. This already, you know, we were talking. We were when the Moscow murders took place, and they were saying, "Oh, such a nice little town without any, you could leave your doors open." Blah blah blah. Well, through not just me but others in the crime community have taught us that that's not exactly true. The people missing from that area is unbelievable, for one thing. And, they talk, well, there hasn't been any murder since 2015 or whatever. But what about before that? And we've showed that too. Anyway. But on the 13th, June 13th, 1996, the entire community's worst nightmare happened. Angie, alone in her apartment, while apparently getting ready for bed, was attacked, brutally raped, and then stabbed 16 times. Her throat was cut in a most vicious manner, and she was left to die in her own pool of blood. Just to let you know, she was almost decapitated. So, yes, it was a very vicious attack. She died next to her bed, still partially wearing the sweatpants she typically slept in. Her favorite teddy bear, which had been used to muffle her screams. Now, I find that a little weird, too. Think about it, folks. Think about what's been found. Her favorite teddy bear, which had been used to muffle her screams, lay next to her. Her shirt had been torn from her body during the vicious assault. The next morning, when Angie didn't answer calls nor show up for work, her friends went to check on her and made the gruesome discovery. One of the city's most innocent had been murdered, and the killer was on the loose. The community was shocked, horrified, enraged, and filled with the resolve few acts can create. Whoever committed this crime would be brought to justice no matter the cost. No matter the cost. No matter the cost. No matter the cost. The Idaho Falls PD detectives assigned to the case went to work, and the investigation into Angie Dodge's murder began. Sounding familiar at all? Officers began questioning neighbors, friends, work associates, family, and anyone else who might know Angie. Crime scene investigators collected evidence, photographed the gruesome scene, including the blood spatters on the wall, carpet, and bed from when the killer plunged his knife into Angie over and over. They also noticed a different stain on her sweats, possibly semen, and sent the evidence to the Idaho State Crime Lab in Meriden. All the diligent criminal investigators do, or as all diligent criminal investigators do, the PD homicide detectives followed every lead until it was completely exhausted and ruled out as a possibility. Some of those leads went absolutely bizarre directions, including to a low-budget filmmaker named Michael Ursi. Michael lived in New Orleans but had ties to Idaho Falls. After a period of time, he was ruled out as a suspect, but not until his life had been completely turned upside down. As the investigation dragged on, forensic evidence results came back. The stain on Angie's sweats was semen, and the DNA profile was sufficient to enter it into the FBI's CODIS database, but no match to a known suspect. The search continued. Eventually, the detectives honed in on a 17-year-old acquaintance of Angie named Christopher Tapp. Chris was a typical teenager raised in a household common in the southeastern Idaho region that had gotten into trouble, but nothing major. Most tragically, though, Chris did not understand why the detectives were asking him questions, especially in a small and uncomfortable interrogation rooms of the police station. And they were asking a lot of questions and giving Chris polygraphs and asking more questions. In time, the questions became more than inquisitive or information gathering. They became leading, and Chris was naive and trusting enough to follow them down the path until he eventually confessed to the rape and murder of Angie. Anybody remember this case at all? Just wondering out there. Let me know in the comments and the chat. Despite retracting the confession and adamantly maintaining his innocence and the fact that the DNA evidence did not match him, Chris was convicted in January of 1997 and sentenced to 20 years to life for Angie's murder, plus 10 years for the rape. At 18, Chris was looking at spending the next 30 plus years in prison. In his mind, his life was over. This is really quite a case here, folks. But it's going to show you some things, and I thought it was very interesting. And then some of the parallels, similarities to the case we're looking at now. Two paths began at that moment, and very few people know the full details. Bottom line, without the following chain of events, Chris Tapp may have very well still be in prison, and Angie Dodge's murder may still be an unsolved case. Path number one, Angie Dodge's mother, Carol, knew from the beginning that there was another man still free who had deposited that semen and likely raped and killed her daughter, or at least helped, and she was not going to rest until he was brought to justice. Carol began asking questions and educating herself on everything from DNA to Angie's relationships. Meanwhile, in short order of being convicted of a crime he knew he did not commit, Chris began writing to whoever would listen, including the Idaho Innocence Project at Boise State University, professing his innocence and wrongful incarceration. In 2007, the IIP accepted Tapp's case. Path number two. Dr. Greg Hampikian at the IIP requested testing of new biological evidence and proposed a novel approach using forensic genealogy on the Y chromosome to find the paternal lineage associated with the evidence. This required new testing of the semen evidence that had already excluded Tapp before trial. The IIP also requested familial searching of incarcerated Idaho felons and reached out to neighboring states to request that testing. In addition, the IIP was joined by the victim's mother, Carol Dodge, in pushing for mitochondrial testing of hair evidence and further testing of such items for touch DNA. In addition, the IIP worked to change Idaho's DNA testing statute, which barred prisoners from requesting and DNA tests 1 year after their conviction. 3, 5, 8 years go by. No real progress on their path. Chris, a relatively uneducated teenager, was now in his 20s, but still couldn't write his pleas in a way that would convince anyone to really listen to him. At the same time, Carol was becoming more and more frustrated with the lack of answers and life in general. The obsession to find Angie's killer was burning in her like an inferno. After more than a decade since Angie's death, despite hating Chris Tapp more than any other person on earth, Carol visited him in prison to plead with him to tell her who else had helped him kill her daughter. The years continued to go by, and Carol continued to visit Chris in prison, always asking him to give up his secrets. But something began to change. Chris's persistent claims of innocence began to penetrate the hate Carol had for him. And by around 2009, 13 years after Chris had been incarcerated, Carol had another mission. She had to help the man she now believed was innocent to be freed. What a story. With Carol's help, Chris began to get the attention of the press. And the process of getting Chris's case reevaluated gathered support. Eventually, the National Innocence Project also got involved. Could Chris Tapp really be innocent? At the same time, Carol continued to research forensic DNA and how it is used in criminal investigations. She realized that if Chris Tapp had done what he had been convicted of, which was holding down Angie's limbs while another man raped her, then his DNA would most likely be all over Angie's sweats. So she began to research ways to collect DNA off of clothing. In 2016, Carol made an important discovery. There was a new forensic DNA collection technology called the MVAC system, and it had been invented by a fellow Idahoan named Dr. Bruce J. Bradley. Not one for wasting time, she picked up the phone and called the company. I remember that call like it was yesterday. I have spoken to victims' families before. It's always a sobering conversation and one I really don't enjoy. But if there's something we can do without giving false hope or jeopardizing the investigation, then of course we will do it. That day I heard Carol's summary of the incredible and torturous journey in trying to find her daughter's killer. And I ended up sending her some basic information about the MVAC, a fire and validation study that I would typically give out at any forensic conference. We ended our conversation with some pleasantries, a promise from Carol that she would be in touch, and I went about the rest of my day mentally writing off the chance I would hear from Carol Dodge again. To my amazement, I received a call the next day from an Idaho Falls Police Department cold case homicide detective. He said Carol Dodge had sent him some information on the MVAC system, and he was interested in learning more, including whether or not we could test some clothing from a 1996 homicide. He certainly had my attention. I referred him to a senior CSI at the West Jordan Police Department named Francine Bardot. Francine had been instrumental in acquiring one of the first MVAC systems in 2013, and since then had become a master at using it to collect DNA material from a variety of evidence surfaces, including clothing and even spent shell casings. The MVAC was soon used to sample areas of Angie's sweats and the teddy bear, apparently with the thought that it would produce Chris Tapp's DNA profile and the claim he was innocent would be put to rest. The results? A male DNA profile that matched the semen stain but did not match Christopher Tapp. In many conversations with detectives over the years, very few things can cause a reverberation through a police department like the phone call from a crime lab with forensic results on a major case. I can only imagine how that result affected the IFPD. In short order, Francine was asked to resample the evidence, only this time to be even more thorough as possible. Caring, meticulous, careful, professional, thorough, and a whole host of other adjectives are always I would describe Francine Bardot of the West Jordan PD. She knew the gravity of this case for Angie's family as well as for Chris Tapp, and she went to work. She not only aggressively back the sweatpants, but she also took all the stuffing out of the teddy bear, which has many parts, to lay the pieces out flat so the MVAC sampling head would make as complete a connection as possible, therefore collect every possible skin, saliva, or any other cell from that teddy bear. The results? Lots of DNA. All of it matched the semen stain, and none of it matched Chris Tapp. Reverberation. Chris Tapp had served 20 years in prison. There was no physical evidence he had committed the crime. In fact, all the evidence pointed at another unknown male. Nor was there an eyewitness or confession, and any good investigator knows you typically need at least one of those to convict, and it needs to be vetted and corroborated. In 2017, Chris Tapp made a deal with the DA. His rape charge was vacated, and he was released with time served. But the murder conviction remained on his record. What the fuck? At least he was out of prison. The rest of the story has been reported ad nauseum, including how genealogical DNA helped track down Brian Drips, Angie's former neighbor and the man who raped and murdered her. So no reason to reiterate that chapter here. What is worth emphasizing, however, is the fact that had Carol Dodge not discovered the MVAC system and pushed for it to be used, Angie's case may still be unsolved and Chris Tapp might still be in prison. Yes, a DNA profile from the semen stain had been produced and it was entered into CODIS. But until the MVAC was used, the assumption that Chris Tapp's DNA was also on the evidence was exactly that, an assumption. A logical and reasonable assumption, but an unknown nothing nonetheless. In the context of the Angie Dodge murder case, June of 2021 was a spectacular month, following up on the original genealogy trail completed by Idaho Falls Police and Dr. Hamilton C. Seymour, who we now know, right? And Parabon Nanolabs identified a new suspect who matched the Y chromosome and all the significant evidence developed by the MVAC. On June 10th, Brian Drips Sr. was sentenced to 20 years to life for Angie's murder. Justice had finally been served. Shortly after that, Christopher Tapp received a 7-figure compensation for his wrongful conviction and incarceration. When asked what it was like to be part of such an amazing case, Francine Bardot stated, "The impact in helping solve a case is knowing you have become part of the whole who have worked hard to recognize the importance of a life taken, the family who has suffered, and the police who have worked countless hours, days, months, and years in order to finally bring closure to those they serve." And for the folks at MVAC Systems, we finally get to tell the full story, and I can assure you we are proud of the MVAC's role in it. There's no other system like the MVAC anywhere in the world, and the number of cases it is helping solve grows by the day. That being said, there are still far too many crime labs, police agencies, and sheriff's departments that don't have the MVAC system. Of course, we're working hard to change that, and the MVAC itself is working the hardest. In fact, it was last year at about this time that the FBI published their comparison data on the MVAC. On average, it was 12 times better in the comparisons they made, up to 66 times in some scenarios. 12 times better may not sound like much, but it is amazingly impactful when DNA is scarce or difficult to collect. And the MVAC collects DNA from places other methods just can't. There is a list of 61 items or scenarios on the MVAC website, or where it works. The MVAC is moving case work forward. That is where lives are changed and victims receive justice. There are more than 20 case summaries on the MVAC system website at www.m/vac.com, whatever. Each is a story that has been shared with us. As the MVAC is put to work by law enforcement everywhere, it will help more cases just like Angie's. Could Angie Dodge's homicide be a Hollywood murder mystery? Absolutely. And in many ways, it has become one considering all the attention it has garnered. But in the end, it's all about one thing: justice. And this is all I care about right here, folks, is justice. All right? One thing that I'm being accused of by a certain gentleman is that I'm a guilter, and I believe that Brian Kohlberg is guilty, which is the farthest thing from the truth. I have made statements that if he is guilty, that I hope that justice is served with something between his eyes. But I say the same for whoever is guilty. But do I believe he's guilty? No, I do not. I do not believe Mr. Kohlberg is guilty. There is just too many things that point to a different person or something. You know, I mean, it's just not, there's not enough evidence for me. If they come up with more evidence, and we'll wait till trial. Of course, trial hasn't even begun yet. You know, so, maybe more evidence will come out. I highly doubt it. But it could, Justice. Angie Dodge and her family deserve justice, just like all the other victims of crimes out there. How justice was eventually found in this case was twisted and convoluted far more than most. But thanks to the hard work and dedication of many people out there, especially Carol Dodge, it was found. And that's all that matters. Rest in peace, Angie. That to me is just a big wow. What a case. And there are some similarities. I'm sure you see. I've heard of this MVAC. People were asking about it like a long time ago. And, and if it was used in this case and blah, 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 blah. Both these cases are very unique. They do have their similarities. I think the Kohlberger case, though, is a little more complex. And Angie's case is very complex, but this one takes the cake. To me, it's like they're trying to, like Mr. Fruitcake, they're trying to hide. They won't show their face. And when they don't show their face and they try hiding things, that's not a good sign. Now, I've heard of, that there's a parallel investigation going on, which there very well could be. That we don't know. It kind of points to that in some ways. There's been wild conspiracies everywhere. The latest one being that they're not passed, that they're actually missing. That's wild. It's a conspiracy theory. This case has just gone every which way. Clint Eastwood, every which way but loose, And I can't wait for trial. I really can't. I want to get this case over with. There's other cases out there that need attention. And I might start delving into some of them, even though people still want to hear about Kohlberger. So I'm trying to do a balancing act, and I think every channel is, of adding some new content and new cases, and still trying to please their families, their subs, with the Kohlberger. So time marches on, and until we see until the case begins, we're stuck with hiding. And to me, I in my opinion, to keep the gag order, I mean, if they got their man, supposedly, right, then what are they worried about? And what the hell are they worried about? Interesting case, Angie Dodge. And I probably will not be in chat. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know what time I'm going to. What time is it now? Well, 3. I'll probably schedule this for by like 5 o'clock or something like that, maybe. So, and until next time, my beautiful crime family, and don't let people get to you. They're not getting to me, Have a slice of fruitcake. It's getting old in that fridge. Until next time, rock and roll.
I see my redhead mess bed, tear shed, queen bee miss squeeze. The stage smells, tells, hells, bells, miss misspells, knocks me on my knees. It didn't hurt, flirt, blood squirt, stuffed shirt like me on a tree. After I count down 3 rounds, in hell I'll be in good company. My redhead, mess bed, tear shed, cream beam a squeeze. The stage of smells, tells, hells, bells, misspells, knocks me on my knees. It didn't hurt, flirt, blood squirt, stuffed shirt like me on a tree. After I count down 3 rounds, in hell I'll be in good company.